one. We are live. Great. All right, first book of Kings, chapter 3. We ended chapter 1 yesterday with the ascension of King Solomon. King Solomon is, who is King Solomon? The son of David. Great. So we see in chapter 3, verse 3. We're going to start in chapter 3, verse 3. Solomon is much like his father. God calls David a man after my own heart. And in chapter 3, verse 3, we see Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of David his father. Only he sacrificed and burnt incense at the high places. What does that mean, to sacrifice and burn at the high places? Yes, good. Right? They chose the high places because those are the places closest to God. Very good. Now, when we talk about it in this sense, this actually is not a good thing, right? You see the word only? He loved the Lord, only he sacrificed and burnt incense at the high places. Are these high places set up for God? If the context is, he loved the Lord, only he sacrificed and burnt incense at the high places, we assume that they're for God? No, they're not, right? So even at this early stage, even with some of the greatest kings of Israel, they're still starting to fall prey to this idolatry, idolatrous action, burning incense at altars, high places that are not for God. Yikes. All right, so Solomon used to offer 1,000 burnt offerings upon that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream that night. So, chapter 3, verse 5. The Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give you." Solomon said, so God's basically saying, hey, whatever you want, ask it right now and I'll give it to you. Think about that. If you were asked that question, how would you respond? God comes to you in a dream and says, ask and I will give it to you. Right? All the things we could think of to ask for. Here's what Solomon says. You have shown great and merciful love to your servant David, my father, because he walked before you in faithfulness, in righteousness, and in uprightness of heart toward you. You have kept for him this great and merciful love, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this day. And now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of David my father, although I am but a little child. I do not know how to go out or to come in, and your servant is in the midst of your people whom you have chosen, a great people that cannot be numbered or counted for multitude. Give your servant, therefore, an understanding mind to govern your people, that I may discern between good and evil. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? What does he ask for? Either one out here.
Wisdom?
Wisdom. Yes. Solomon asks for wisdom in this moment. Let's see, 1 Kings 3. God offers Solomon whatever he wants. Solomon asks for wisdom. He asks for wisdom to be able to govern his people well. What a great thing to ask for, right? What a great thing to ask for. And I think, and God certainly feels the same way. It pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this, and God said to him, because you have asked this, and not asked for yourself long life or riches or the life of your enemies, but have asked for yourself understanding to discern what is right. Behold, I now do according to your word. Behold, I give you a wise and discerning mind, so that none like you has been before you, and none like you shall arise after you. I give you also what you have not asked, both riches and honor, so that no other king shall compare with you all your days. And if you will walk in all my ways, keeping my statutes and commandments as your father David walked in them, then I will lengthen your days. And Solomon awoke, and behold, it was a dream. Then he came to Jerusalem and stood before the ark of the covenant of the Lord, offered up burnt offerings and peace offerings, and made a feast for his servants. All right. Solomon asked for wisdom. God says, I'm so pleased with this request. I also give you riches and long life, prosperity, as long as you follow my commandments. As long as you follow my commandments. So Solomon becomes the wisest king ever to rule. We see in the next few chapters real examples of this. We see this in verse 16 in chapter 4. In 1 Kings 6, we can entitle this Solomon's Dream. Chapter 6, Solomon builds the temple. And God continues to make the same promises over and over again. In verse 12, now the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning this house which you are building. If you will walk in my statutes and obey my ordinances and keep all my commandments and walk in them, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father. I will dwell among the children of Israel, and I will not forsake my people Israel. This sounds like all of his promises, right? Just do what I ask and things will go well for you. Live the way that I made you to live the way that I am teaching you to live, and things will go well for you. That's really all God says throughout eternity, right? And yet we continue to struggle to do so. Solomon builds the temple in chapter 6. In chapter 10, we see the visit of the Queen of Sheba. 1 Kings 10. This was actually previously mentioned in another class section here. So that's why I bring up the Queen of Sheba here. So the Queen of Sheba heard about King Solomon and how wise he was, how much riches there was there. She's like, I got to see this for myself. I got some questions. I want to see if he's able to answer them. And so she packs up. She travels all the way to Israel, to Jerusalem.
Where's Sheba? Where does she rule?
I have no idea. That's an interesting question. I do not know where Sheba is. I assume some faraway place in the east, but you're right. I've never thought to actually look up. I don't know if we actually know. I mean, we know where some places are, but we don't know where every place is. We have some good idea where some of the places are, but it's all archaeological digs, right? Some places, like, we don't even know possibilities. Like, it's just some cities are just lost, right? See, especially in archaeology, right? You're digging down, right? So some may have just been mowed over, perhaps by an invading army, and it's gone, and we'll never find it. So where is Sheba? I don't know. We might not know where it is. We might. I have to look that up. But feel free to look that up for me and come back tomorrow. I'll give you a participation point for that. Queen of Sheba. So she comes and she visits, and she is blown away by the wisdom of Solomon. Absolutely blown away by it. She goes and spreads his fame even further. She said to the king, the report was true which I heard in my own land of your affairs and of your wisdom, but I did not believe the reports until I came and with my own eyes had seen it. And behold, half was not told to me. Your wisdom and prosperity surpassed the report which I heard. Happy are your wives, happy are these your servants who continually stand before you and hear your wisdom. Blessed be the Lord your God, who has delighted in you and set you on the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loved Israel forever, he has made you king, that you may execute justice and righteousness. What a statement, right? What a statement. Solomon, however, wasn't perfect. Solomon wasn't perfect, and after his reign, the kingdom quickly crumbles. He is the last really good king. In 1 Kings, I'll make sure I get this right. 1 Kings 12. We now leave the purple section. We are now in the black section, the divided kingdom. The kingdom splits in two. Quickly, bad kings begin to take the throne, and soon the kingdom splits. The northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. And we have the southern kingdom, Judah. The northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. Which one has Jerusalem, by the way? No, it's the southern one. That's good. That's a 50 shot. In Judah. Jerusalem is in Judah. So this was more than a political divide. This was much more than a political divide, since it involved a division in religious faith and practice. Remember, the Passover, and during the Passover, all the Jews went to Jerusalem, which is in the southern kingdom. And so the northern kingdom says, you know what? We're going to set up our own temple in the north. We're going to set up our own temple in the north. So these religious deviations became a form of apostasy. Apostasy is splitting of the faith. So it was not unlike the cult of the golden calf, which happened in the desert in Moses' absence. We see very similar things happening as well. So this was a real huge split in the nation of Israel. A traumatic moment, of course, for the people. Seeing this kingdom split, much more than a political split, it was a religious practice split as well. Their whole lives, right? Everything that was their lives centered around became split between these two kingdoms because of bad kings. So we're going to start to see, we're going to really just move through a lot of these kings. One of the major players during this time, we're going to see first mentioned in chapter 17. Elijah appears on the scene for the first time in chapter 17. Elijah comes onto the scene. Elijah is a prophet. And one of the first things he does is he prophesies a drought. So he's engaging in prophecy in a time where the kings are not listening to the prophet. God raises up Elijah. Kings really aren't listening to him. The kings have fallen already. He's far away from the Lord. And Elijah is sent to call them back. There's a few stories I want to share. The life of Elijah. Elijah leads a very interesting life. Lots of suffering, of course. He has to be very much a warrior for God in a time where nobody wants to be a warrior for God. And so just a couple of stories about Elijah. Let's start in chapter 18, verse 20. Kings 18. Elijah versus prophets of Baal. Oh, have we seen that before? Baal? Where did we see Baal? Not Moses in the desert. I think we really mentioned it in passing.
Was he the one that did the seer? Was he the seer?
Yes, good. So, do you remember his name, the seer?
Awesome.
Remember the seer's name? This is the story of the talking donkey. The seer from the talking donkey. No, the seer is not correct.
Barak.
Barak is the name of the king. Who's the name of the seer?
Jael.
Remember when I did the notes? I had BK and BM because the names are similar, right? BK was Barak. Balaam, very good. So, same lowercase g God, right?
Weren't those also gods of the Israelites worship?
Baal? No, Baal's a false god.
Okay.
Yeah, Baal's a false god. So, Balaam was listening to God, but he was not just a prophet for God. So God used Balaam, but Balaam was a prophet for Baal. He was a priest for Baal. So God just happened to use him. He was listening to God and he paid attention. So really that story, especially remember, it's even foreigners are better at listening to God than if the Israelites are, right? So that brings us to chapter 18, verse 20. So Ahab, we're talking about Ahab, who is the king at this time. And off the top of my head, I can't remember which kingdom he's from. I think the northern kingdom, but I can't remember. Ahab sent to the sons of Israel and gathered all the prophets together at Mount Carmel. And Elijah came near to all the people and said, "How long will you go living with two different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal, then follow him." All right. How long will you be living along with two opinions? Follow God or follow Baal? You can't follow both, right? Especially God. God is alone, right? There's only one God. I mean, he's God alone. You can't follow both. So pick one now. Make a choice. Don't, keep one foot in each spot. Pick one. And the people did not answer him a word. Then Elijah said to the people, even I only am left a prophet of the Lord, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. All right, so we see Elijah is one, and there are 450 of them. Oops. 450 prophets of Baal. He's by himself. He is defending God alone. So you can see, even in these numbers, right, how far how far people have fallen from God. That he alone against 450 prophets. Let 2 bulls be given to us, and let them choose one bull for themselves and cut it in pieces and lay it on the wood and put no fire on it. And I will prepare the other bull and lay it on wood and put no fire on it. You call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. And the God who answers by fire, he is God. So essentially, he's saying, all right, you pick your God, I'll pick my God. We'll put 2 altars up. We'll get the bull ready for sacrifice. Put it on the wood of the altar, but don't put any fire on it. The God who comes down and consumes it with fire is the true God. Right? He's challenging, he's calling them out because he knows Baal's false. Baal's not going to do anything, but he trusts in God that he will. And they took the bull which was given them, and they prepared it. And they called on the name of Baal from morning until noon, saying, O Baal, answer us. But there was no voice. No one answered. And they lived about the altar which they had made. All right, so Elijah challenges prophets of Baal. It's an easy way to put this. Two altars. True God will consume sacrifice. So the prophets of Baal go first. They cry out to their God. And then at noon, after they've been crying out for a while, at noon Elijah mocked them, saying, Cry aloud, for he is a God. Either he is musing, or he has gone aside, or he is on a journey. Perhaps he's asleep and must be awakened. I love this about Elijah. That he just straight up openly mocks them. Hey, where's your God? Maybe he's on a journey. Maybe he's asleep and you gotta scream a little louder to wake him up, you know? She starts to mock them. They cried aloud and cut themselves after their custom with their swords and their lances until the blood gushed out of them. And as midday passed, they raved on until the time of the offering of the oblation. But there was no voice. No one answered. No one heeded. I think it's important, right? Elijah mocks them. Mocks them. Remember, he prophesied a drought at this point. So Israel is in the midst of a large drought.
By the time when he was like mocking them, did God consume his sacrifice?
Not yet. Not yet, because they're going first. So we'll see what happens when it's his turn. They're going first. He's just kind of sitting back waiting. He's got the lawn chair and he's got his drink and he's like, hey, still waiting. Still waiting. Your God's not very powerful, apparently, or maybe he's on a journey. Then Elijah said to the people, Come near to me. And all the people came near to him. And he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been thrown down. Elijah took 12 stones, according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord came, saying, Israel shall be your name. And with the stones he built an altar in the name of the Lord. And he made a trench about the altar, as great as would contain 2 measures of seed. And he put the wood in order, and cut the bull in pieces, and laid it on the wood, and he said, Fill 4 jars with water, and pour it on the burnt offering on the wood. All right, what's he doing here? He says, put water, 4 jugs of water, and they're not small. Just put them on the altar. Yeah, making it harder for it to light on fire. So again, he's continuing to, he's like in full boss mode right now. He's got so much trust in God. Not only that, what's scarce at this time? Water. He said, take 4 jugs of water, which is scarce, we're in a drought, put it on the altar. Pour it all over the altar. And then he said, do it a second time. It wasn't enough to have 4 jugs of water. Let's do another 4 jugs of water. And they did it a second time. And then he said, do it a third time. So they do it a third time. And the water ran about the altar and filled the trench also with water. And at the time of the offering, the oblation, Elijah the prophet came near and said, O Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known this day that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, that I have done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Lord. Answer me that this people may know that you, O Lord, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back. Then the fire of the Lord fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and licked up the water that was in the trench. When all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and said, "The Lord, He is God, the Lord, He is God." And Elijah said to them, "Seize the prophets of Baal, let not one of them escape." And they seized them, and Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and killed them there. All right.
Didn't you just break a commandment by killing them?
No, because what's the better translation?
Murder?
Yes. Are they innocent? No. They're not. They're not. They led the people astray. They led them to choose false gods. They're not innocent. The penalty was death. So, God immediately answers. I just love how Elijah is just full boss mode in this, right? The entire time. He mocks their God. He makes it harder for God to consume the offering with the water in the middle of a drought. All right, so God shows up, consumes his sacrifice. Prophets of Baal are all killed. That was important, right, for them to be killed, because one, they're the people who led the people astray into sin, and the punishment for sin is death, especially sin like this. All right. Really, the idea is, right, following God matters. There's real consequences to it. Yep. All right, the next story I want to tell is from 2 Kings chapter 2, verse 23. 2 Kings chapter 2. So where Elijah he's in, oh, no, okay, I need to, we're not with Elijah anymore. All right, so Elijah has this long ministry, right? And then, and this is super confusing at times, I know, Elisha succeeds Elijah. Elisha, I know, why do they have to have very similar names? I don't know. It's a big deal. So I like to pronounce them differently to keep them more. Elijah and Elisha. That I is a different I. So Elijah and Elisha. Elisha succeeds him. Very similar ministries, lots of miracles that he performs. So now the men of the city said to Elisha, "Behold, the situation of the city is pleasant, as the Lord sees. But the water is bad, the land is unfruitful." He said, "Bring me a new bowl and put salt in it." So they brought it to him. Then he went to the spring of water and threw salt in it and said, "Thus says the Lord, I have made this water wholesome. Henceforth neither death nor miscarriage shall come from it." So the water has been wholesome to this day, according to the word which Elisha spoke. So we see miracles like that showing God's providence, his care, and his power.
So did you basically make holy water?
Well, I actually think he performed an exorcism. So that water, as we saw there, right, was producing death and miscarriage. And I think he performed an exorcism over it. He throws salt in it, exorcised salt, and now the water is made wholesome. So I think you could probably say that holy water too at the same time. He's exercising the water. He went up there to Bethel, and while he was going up on the way, some small boys came out of the city and jeered at him, saying, "Go up, you bald head! Go up, you bald head!" Making fun of him, calling him Baldy. And he turned around, and when he saw them, he cursed them in the name of the Lord. And 2 she-bears came out of the woods and tore 42 of the boys. And from there he went out to Mount Carmel, and then he returned to Samaria. The word of the Lord, thanks be to God. Does that sound weird? Yep. They called him Baldy. He's like, he throws a curse on them, and 2 bears come out of the woods and tear them up. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about this. This can sound very strange today to us, right? Like, what the heck? The situation is actually much more severe to Elisha than the story really lets on. So, Elisha's older at this time, so he's kind of nearing the end of his ministry here. He's an old man, he's by himself. There's at least 42 boys there, right? And really I think it says there's even more of them, isn't it? Does it say? Maybe not. So maybe that's tradition that says there's probably like 50 of them there. That's a large group, right? They weren't just making fun of his baldness, they were actually threatening his life in that moment. The 50 of them were actually threatening his life, which shows, this story is included to show that the life of the prophet is not an easy life. Right? And especially if you're going against the culture all the time, constantly going against culture, tearing down false idols. The life of the prophet is not easy. People are constantly looking to tear him down. This is another example of that, where these boys come out and they're mocking him, and they're ready to actually do him some harm. They're probably going to kill him. And so, in self-defense, he calls on the Lord. 2 bears come out of the woods and take them out. God is trying to show, too, that Elisha is not to be messed with. God is blessing what Elisha is doing. So perhaps we're in a culture today that needs to be shown return to God. We need prophets to rise up in our own time today, right? You see a lot of false idols out there. Life of the prophet is not easy. But God protects the prophet. God protects the prophet. That's what we see here. I also think the story is kind of funny too. Right? Go up, you bald head. Go up, Baldy. I wanted to bring Father Jim in to do this story. I should have done that, shouldn't I? Definitely. I'll be Elisha. Father Jim can be. No, Father Jim would have to be Elisha, right? And I would be the 42 boys now being mauled by a bear. Maybe I'll be the bear. How much time we got? 6, 7 minutes. Chapter 4, we see more miracles of Elisha. Elisha and the widow's jar of oil, the Shunammite couple. Elisha brings back to life the son of the Shunammite woman. So he, has resurrection powers. Kind of cool, right? Where do I want to go? How do I want to finish? I'm not going to finish 2 Kings today. We want to go to Naaman. All right, let's quickly tell the story of Naaman. We can do that. 2 Kings 5. Naaman Naaman is a commander of the army of the king of Syria. Naaman is a commander of the army of Syria. He's not an Israelite, right? He's Syrian. Now, I don't think the Syria in the ancient world is the same as the Syria today, although they share the same name. I don't think there's a connection there. Sorry, Naaman cured. We wrote a lot of notes today. It was good. So he's a commander of the Syrian army. Commander of the Syrian army, not Israelite. However, he gets leprosy. Now, we've talked a little bit about leprosy before, right? Have we talked much about it? No? So leprosy is I think it's a skin disease. And your body parts basically just start to die. The nerves in your body go away. They don't feel pain at times, but that can be a really bad thing because then injuries happen a lot more frequently. The skin just starts to die, limbs start to fall off, fingers fall off. It's a really, really awful degenerating disease.
Can you still get it today?
Leprosy does still exist today,
Or somebody else?
and it's not difficult. So you have leper colonies because it's easy to contract it. It's not super easy to contract it, but it's certainly if you work with people with leprosy, you'll probably end up getting it. Yeah, leprosy. So it doesn't exist in the first world, really. Here in America, it doesn't exist. Third world countries, it exists a lot. So
Is there any way to like cure it?
I don't know. I don't think so, but yeah, it's pretty awful, right? Your skin turns white, and as you see, it's because it's dying. The skin cells just die. You just degenerate. So Naaman gets leprosy. This is bad. This is really bad for him. And so his servant says, you know what? There's this guy, his name is Elisha in Israel. I hear he's performing lots of miracles. You should probably go to him. He says, okay, I can do that. Naaman goes to Elisha. He actually goes to the king first, the king of Israel. Go now, and I will send a letter to the king of Israel. So he went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 festal garments. He's going to pay for this, right? He's like, hey, I want to pay for whatever Elisha can bring. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, am I God to kill and make alive? That this man sends word to me to cure a man of his leprosy? Only consider and see how he's seeking a quarrel with me. So the king gets this all wrong, right? He thinks the guy's just looking for a quarrel, wants to start a war, and this is the way to do it. Elisha's like, dude, stop. And so Elisha hears about this and sends word, go plunge yourself into the Jordan River 7 times and you'll be cured. That's it. That's all I have to do. Go into the Jordan River, plunge 7 times and you'll be cured. Naaman gets filled with pride. First of all, I think he's put off by the fact that Elisha doesn't actually go and visit him. He just sends word, go do that and you'll be cured. Second of all, he says, are there not good enough streams where I'm from? Our waters are definitely better than your puny Israelite waters. Why do I have to plunge in your waters? And he's going to turn around and walk away and not do it. His pride almost got in the way of him being cured of leprosy. Yikes, that's a lot of pride, right? The servant begs him and says, listen, just do what he says, right? You want to be cured of your leprosy or not? Just do what he says. And so he finally runs. He dips himself in the Jordan River 7 times, comes out, and he is cured of his leprosy. His skin is like new. And he praises God for it. Not only is he cured of his skin ailment, he's cured of that pride that he had within him before too. Which one does God care about more? The pride, right? Because the pride can keep us from God. Leprosy can't. The pride can. He's cured of his pride at the same time. I think Elisha knew this. That's why Elisha didn't go see him. That's why Elisha had him do what he asked him to do. To rid him of his pride. All right. Starting tomorrow, we're going to move up to Kings chapter 20. We'll quickly hit Chronicles. Quickly hit Ezra, Nehemiah, Maccabees. And that's it for this section. So, that means another test is coming soon. So let's see, next, probably in the first week of November. A couple of weeks.
I found Sheba.
You found what?
Sheba.
Where's Sheba?
It's like,
Oh, Sheba's way far away. Holy smokes. So, you have the Arabian Peninsula, right? Saudi Arabia. It's like way in the south of Saudi Arabia. So you can go all the way up to the Red Sea, past Egypt, to Israel. That was not a short trip. Thank you for looking that up. We good with all this? Anybody have any questions? Great. If you guys on this side, you can see the notes here. Yeah. Thank you too. I forgot to read. Oh,